So I'm really happy to have Will with me today. We've been in touch for a while now. We started discussing a while back when you looked at Asana as a possible, as a potential app for your backup solution. And we talked about Asana, we talked about how the API works, and we talked with your IT department, and we stayed in touch. And I wanted you to come on my podcast somehow to talk about backup, because I think it's an interesting topic. So how are you today?
Yeah, hi, Bastian. I'm great. Thanks for having me on this podcast. Yeah.
Where are you located again?
I work and live in Stockholm, Sweden, but our team is spread all over Europe, mainly in Belgium. I'm Belgian from origin.
You don't speak French? In Belgium, you don't speak French?
I used to be able to speak well French, good French. Now, after living a few years in Sweden, it's getting worse, I guess.
No problem. So can you introduce yourself and especially your company and what you do? I know that you do backup for other tools as well. So if you can explain how things work and what you do exactly.
Sure. So I'm the product manager of Pro Backup, and Pro Backup tries to be a simple and secure backup app specifically for work management platforms. So right now we have a working version for Asana and Airtable, but other platforms are lined up, such as Monday.com, ClickUp, and so on. And so what Pro Backup does in a nutshell is just really back up all of your specific Asana data once every 24 hours, and also give you the option to restore that data in case something goes wrong. And I guess what the good thing about Pro Backup, I guess, is that we try to go the extra mile to back up all of the data types within Asana. So we try to back up also like custom fields, not just like your raw exports, but also like your comments, your attachments, everything that resides within your accounts. Yeah.
Are you successful at backupping attachments?
Yes.
Okay, because I was actually thinking about you, because what I do now is whenever I have a session with a client, I always record. And I always upload the attachment into Asana. And Asana has a limit to 100 meg per file. So I have to split my sessions into 4 quarters to upload onto Asana. And I always think about the IT team there, because I'm just dumping so many stuff into their Asana. But in your case, you have to back up that as well. And that represents a huge amount of data.
Yeah, it does. Yeah, and I think the bigger bulk of the data that, like in terms of data usage, are those attachments indeed of our users. Yeah.
Yeah, that must have been quite a decision to decide to back up attachment or not.
I mean, not really, because I think it's often very important information. Those attachments, like think of design companies that have like high quality or HD designs and stuff. So if they are uploaded into Asana and they delete the project, then that project is worth nothing if we don't also restore those attachments. So from the beginning, it was clear that we needed to cover this as well.
Yeah, makes sense. So how does the recovery work? Because actually we don't care about how you back up. We only care about how we recover the files. So I think I remember you have a Google Drive option to have access to whatever it is, whatever the Asana is made of in Google Drive. So how does that work? How does it look like? And also, how does it work for the attachment?
Yeah, so the way the backup app works essentially is that we back up all of the data of your Asana account, and we will in the first step, back that up with heavy encryption to our own servers. And that's really the data that we use to restore your data. And then in the second step, we will also sync part of this backup to Google Sheets and sync all of your attachments to a secured Google Drive folder. The way we kind of constructed this Pro Backup is that we offer a few features. When you log in, you will see on the left side that tries to cover different use cases. So for example, we have a snapshot feature, which allows you to export the project to how it was a few weeks or months ago. So that's like an Apple's time box where you can kind of go back in time. And that's helpful when you realize, oh, a data import went wrong, or there's an integration with Zapier that went wrong, and all of my data looks weird. How can I restore this project? So that's one case. And then we also have the option to restore deleted data. So if you delete a task in Asana, it sits in the trash bin for 30 days and then it's being removed. Or if you delete a project, a whole project, you can restore it with the email link within 7 days. But of course, sometimes people don't notice it, or there's like some malicious, like a disgruntled employee has deleted the project and stuff, and not always you discover these things on time. So then the restore option allows you to really filter to see which items or task has been deleted, and then you can restore them directly back into Asana. And that's a feature that we're still adding like features or capabilities to that. So right now you can already restore deleted tasks, but soon it will also be possible to restore whole projects directly into Asana, and that's then with all of the comments files like custom fields and all of the right values added.
Nice.
Yeah.
Can you give again those numbers on how long back you can restore from Asana and from you? So from you, it's basically forever.
Yeah. So the principle for us is that we never delete your data. So as soon as you start a free trial with us, we start backing up your data. And then as of that point, you can basically go back in time to that point. Of course, some clients want to delete their backup data. And therefore, yeah, they can just contact us. But that's more a manual process where we delete their old backup data from our servers.
Yeah. And can you give again the numbers regarding Asana? Asana only keeps a project for 7 days. Is that what you said?
Yeah. So in Asana, if you delete a project, I think all of the present members get an email of like, hey, your project was restored, click this link to restore it. But that expires within 7 days. And then, yeah, for tasks and subtasks, it sits in the trash bin for 30 days.
And the delete permanently option you have in Asana does delete permanently.
Yeah, so then it doesn't go to the trash bin and it's deleted straight from your.
Okay. And you said in your case you back up once every day. Do you don't back up during the day when things are happening? So if I create something, delete it after an hour, it doesn't show up in the backup, right?
Yeah, and that's very true. So it's every 24 hours. Of course, we try to back up as much as possible of your data through your local time during the night. So like we start around 10 p.m. But okay. Yeah, because we need to speak to the API of Asana, we need to spread it out over a certain amount of time. So it takes more than a few hours because we need to back up a lot of data, check and verify, do loads of integrity checks. So it takes a bit of time to make sure everything has been backed up, of course. Yeah.
And are you backupping only things that changed, or are you doing an entire snapshot every day?
We do a bit of both, but on a normal day, we'll just check on the incremental changes. Otherwise, it would not be possible to back up your whole accounts of all of our clients every single day. So no, it's an incremental backup that we add to the previous backup. Yeah.
That must be a coding nightmare. I'm a software developer, and I just I don't want to have to code something like this. It must be so hard.
It's been a fun challenge. Yeah.
And what you learned from other tools like Podio and Airtable, were you able to apply the same thing to Asana, or did you have to redo everything from scratch, basically?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think it's important to know that this Pro Backup is actually the third iteration of a backup app. We initially built a backup app for Podio, and then we did a whole iteration just for Podio because performance was such a key issue there. And then we started again from scratch, and then we said, why not make this backup app more holistic so that we can easily
plug in other tools on it.
Exactly. So that's basically the launch of Pro Backup. So in doing that, I think the key thing we've learned is really focus on security and performance. Those are the two things you have to keep in mind when you start building a backup app. And then, of course, every platform is very different in terms of API. Asana's APIs has a few quirks and a few special things that we need to keep in mind. So it's always a bit of an extra process to make the product native for Asana, for example. But nothing too exotic for Asana. Asana is quite well structured.
And I think also in your case, what's complex is that depending on the plan people have in Asana, the API doesn't offer the same kind of endpoints and features. So you need to adapt your code to whatever plan the user has, which is probably quite a challenge. If we just back up, how did you back up in time? How did you get into the backup business, basically? Did you wake up one day saying, I want to back up people's accounts?
Kind of. No, we so Pro Backup is a product of our bigger company, B4BIT. and we also do consultancy there. And like I mentioned before, we work a lot with Podio still. It's a bit of an older platform. And there we had the case that we were the end user, right? So we had one of our clients had deleted a whole bunch of their subscriptions. And then even though we had subscribed to backup apps for Podio, they were not able to restore our data. So then we said like, okay, we need to have this work, like this cannot happen a second time. And then if we do this, why not make it a add-on for the whole Podio community? And then from there on, we've also made a few other add-ons for Podio, but then as the backup app got a few updates, then we decided to move, kind of doing what we did best, I guess, and then change this project towards Pro Backup as it is today.
And why did you decide to look at Asana in the first place?
So we try to do it with platforms that we work with ourselves. So we also do a few other, like our company does a few other consultancy projects as well. And there we also work with Asana, Airtable, and a few other platforms. So I usually also like manage my private stuff in Asana, for example. So these are platforms that we know, and yeah, that makes logical sense. I mean, Asana is very popular. That's of course an important factor. But it also, yeah, it seems like a reliable cloud app to build an add-on for anyways. Yeah.
And how does Asana and the other see you? Because basically, if I build an app and I have someone building a backup for my app, I would be offended because it would mean that I'm not reliable and people need a backup for my app. So how do they feel about you?
I think, I mean, they welcomed our app, but I think what we actually solve for our clients is that, I mean, Asana does have a good backup system in place, and they have a good backup of their cloud infrastructure. But for a lot of companies, just using Asana as the backbone of their organization and literally use Asana for all of their processes, I mean, regardless of how good Asana is, they still want to have an independent, redundant backup solution somewhere else. Like, it doesn't matter how good Asana backs up your data, they still want to have a fail-safe, or maybe a second fail-safe even. So that's an important thing. But then also, like, as we talked before about the trashing and of items or deleting projects, I mean, it is very hard for Asana to make all of the data always available and like provide a time box in-house. So I can understand why a lot of these platforms don't have like super extensive restore capabilities. It is super hard for them to provide in the first place. So I guess I hope they are also a bit glad that we exist. So that means that, like, if some clients say like, I can't use Asana because we need to have an offline backup somewhere, or just have a backup somewhere in another cloud place, then I can do this using Pro Backup. Yeah.
So if we try to go through all the use cases for someone that would need a backup, what would they be? So the first one that comes to my mind is an employee deletes a project and you realize that after a week.
Yeah.
And then Asana deleted the project, but you would be able to restore it from your app, basically. I see another one, which is Asana is unavailable for 30 minutes or an hour, and you really need to get that information about that specific client. What else what other use cases do you have for needing a backup?
So I think to give the complete picture, you have data can be deleted by people, and it can be both accidentally or like maliciously handled employee, which happens. And then there's, like you said, so Asana is not available. That happens as well. You say, oh, we have this call, I just need to call this lead right now. Then they can just go through our platform, or just go to the data that's synced to Google Drive and see everything there, and still continue to work for a few hours. And then there's also just having it like as a disaster recovery as a whole, which is like really worst case scenario. And in between there's also like if you import data incorrectly, or you made a Zapier integration, or especially when integrations with third-party apps, we notice a few restore requests when they're like, we did something wrong, like, all this data is messed up, I want to delete everything and just have the import the data again from the same project, but like how it was 2 days ago. So data integrations, corrupt data, these kind of things play a role as well. Yeah.
And how hard is it for you to convince clients to sign up for something they usually don't need until they actually need it, like an insurance. It's really hard to convince someone to pay several
Yeah,
$100 or.
that's me being kind of in the sales role. That's a very hard question,
Yeah.
and we try our best, of course. A lot of the clients find us after it's kind of too late. So after they have deleted data, and they're like, "Hey, I just deleted my data. You have your pro backup. Help me, please."
Does that happen often? People really think you can help them in that case?
Yeah. That's I think a big significant inflow of new users.
Okay.
Comes from that, actually.
But those are good leads, because for next time they could be helped by
exactly
app.
Yeah, so they are easy to convince because they then realize, oh, I really should have had this before. Unfortunately, so this, just to be clear, at this point, if they didn't have a trial before with us, there's no way we can help them, right? So we need to back up the data first. That's not always clear to users. But yeah, so that's one thing. And I think just more maybe the slightly bigger users or companies that use Asana, I think are looking for this as well. They just like, okay, we want to use Asana, but we need a backup option, or they already have something in place, but it's very cumbersome. It's like a manual process, like with copy pasting or duplicating process. And they were like, oh, wait a minute, you do this automatically, and like just we don't have to do anything. Great, let's switch to your system.
And I guess big companies have some guidelines in place where they just need to have a backup for the main app they use. So they are forced to find some kind of a solution to that problem.
Yeah, it's a legal requirement in some countries as well.
Okay, all right. And what would you say to a client that that just says it's easy to build a backup solution? There's the API in Asana. I don't want to pay someone to do that. I'll do it myself.
That's a very good question. So you can do it yourself, but just know, like I mentioned, like we have experience in this. Like we have already been through a few iterations. We do it in a secure way, and our backup app is very performant. But also, I think if I take a step back, I think our ideal customer is like a small business owner who doesn't either have the technology, developing capacity within his team, or doesn't have the time to sort it out himself. And so we are, for them, like a very easy way to check that box, like, oh yes, I need to sort this out. Thank you guys. Setting up an account only takes a minute, and then it's done, and I'm kind of in the safe zone. But I mean, if you want the challenge, you can always do it yourself using the API. But I think most of our clients are not the type of companies who have those kind of developers in-house.
And especially with it's a lot of data, and Asana, like any API, has the rate limiting mechanism, saying that basically you need to slow down sometimes. You can get some data faster then, and you can need to wait again, and so you don't overload the API and you don't get banned. So that's probably the biggest problem you have. And as a tool builder myself with the API, that's one of the problem. You try to go too fast, and the API slows you down and just breaks down until you wait the specific amount of time before retrying. What can you tell us about the team? How many people are working on this, and also what's the tech stack behind the solution?
Yeah, so I'm the product manager of ProBackup, but as I mentioned before, it's part of B4B, a bigger team. We are about close to 20 people, and there are a handful of people working full-time on ProBackup. So everybody is kind of involved with our company in doing this. And of course, we work with a lot of freelancers, RT architects on and off for particular projects. So it kind of fluctuates back and forth through time, but we're quite a few people.
Yeah, and I guess you invest a lot of time at the beginning to build the backbone of the backup solution, and then it slows down a little bit, I guess.
It depends kind of on also like the future timeline where we move to other platforms that will kind of, then we will need to increase, of course, our developing capacity and so on. And then in terms of technology stack, so on our website, probackup.io, you can go to the footer. There's a dedicated page for GDPR, and there you find a complete list with all our subprocessors. Okay. And then our front end is written in Ruby on Rails, and the back end is written in a compiled language.
Okay, all right. And who does the backup for ProBackup?
The backup of ProBackup?
Yeah, are you backupping your own data somewhere?
Yeah, we are, yeah. So we just, so your data basically is backed up to our servers, but of course, yeah, making use of the cloud infrastructure that's being secured on its own way again.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm asking because a famous French website provider last week lost one of his building to fire, and I think about 1/3 of the French web just went down overnight. And if people didn't pay enough, the provider did not provide any backup for the website, so you were basically losing everything. So I think it's important to have a backup in a different location and not in the same building, obviously.
Yeah, exactly. So in this case, then I think yeah, our backup app would have been coming and good and handy, and also then the users would be able to choose either to go through our user interface or just to go to the Google Drive where all of their tasks are synced as well.
Can you give us an idea on price, on how much it costs for a freelancer, medium-sized company, and big company to back up an entire account? I guess it really depends on the size of the account, but you must have some rough number of how much it costs if you can.
Yeah, so we work with a tier or 3 price plans, basically light, plus, and complete. And they go from, if you pay for the monthly license, they go from $19 per month to $99 per month.
Okay.
It's important to note that so we back up all of the data within your Asana account. So but that also means you only need 1 license for your team of organization.
If you have access to everything.
If you have access to everything. So that's something we try to work on as well, to make clear to the user, okay, it's best that you use some kind of either admin account or support account that has by default access to all of the projects of your organization, and you kind of manage the backup through that admin accounts.
But it also means that you do not back up anything that is private, that special account doesn't have access to, obviously.
Yeah, so if you go through the onboarding flow, you can on the last step check which workspaces you would like to include or exclude. So there you can decide, okay, I don't want to back up my private workspace, for example. Yeah.
Okay, all right. I've been using an app for a long time that's called Pray. This is an app on the iPhone that you use whenever you lose your iPhone. Pray helps you find again your iPhone, and they have a lot of great recovery stories on their website about how people recovered their iPhone. Do you have some backup recovery stories?
Yeah. Like I said, there's quite it happens quite often. Of course, I think quite a big story in the beginning was already in beta phase last summer, where somebody went on holidays and he came back 2 weeks later, realizing that like he didn't know what had happened, but there were some interns working in his team. Is like, damn, everything is just messed up. So, and then we luckily then could just provide him all of the snapshots of 2 weeks ago, and he just deleted everything in Asana and then imported those files again. So that was great timing wise, because like we just had finished that feature, and then immediately we kind of saved someone's business with that. Yeah, and there's of course similar stories to that, but it's kind of how it can go. Yeah.
So when a backup is needed, what is the more frequent scenario in your case? Just people deleting stuff by mistake? That's the most frequent?
Yeah, deleting tasks. It's hard to track like the motivation, but I think it's often based on the emails that we get. It's often because they thought they were in a testing environment, and then it appeared to be production and that kind of stuff. And also, to my surprise, actually, I found both from Podio users, but also Asana users and Airtable users, that they do not like to archive. So
yeah, exactly. I was about to say this. People just finish a project, they just click delete, and then they lose the project, and because they didn't know the archive button exists, probably.
Yeah, or even in tasks. So then I've recently did a few more interviews, and they said like I always click delete permanently because I don't like it to sit in my.
Yeah, exactly. I've seen a client do that. They delete and then they right away hit the delete permanently button, and I'm like, why do you do this? Why do you want to delete permanently? It doesn't make sense.
Yeah, people want to keep their trash bin clean for some reason.
I also think most of the time people don't read what's on the screen. They just click the shiniest button on the screen, and they don't care about what happens.
Yeah.
Okay, great. Thanks. Do you want to add anything else? About
No,
backup in general, or maybe the app itself?
No, I think we covered most of it. I think if you want to get a better understanding of how it works, feel free to visit our website. All information is there, of course. We offer two-week free trial periods with no strings attached. So that's gives them enough space to kind of explore it. Yeah. And if people would have questions, they can always email us. Of course, we're happy to answer them.
And I think if you log into your website, you can have an estimate of how big your account is, so you can know how much you're going to pay in the end. Is that correct?
Yeah, so we actually changed our price plans a bit because now the middle tier, so the plus plan allows you to back up 50 gigabytes of data, and the complete plan allows up to 250 gigabytes, which is really, say, for a few exceptions, covers most use cases. So.
But it's really hard when you have an account to know how much gigabyte you deal with. It's really hard. So I think it was good to have something in your app to estimate how big your account is. I have no idea how big my account is.
Yeah,
it's really hard to
say. Yeah, if you sign up, then it takes a bit of time for us to really capture all of your data, but then the next day you'll see how much gigabytes are stored in your accounts. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
My pleasure.
See you next time. Bye.
Yeah, good to talk to you. Thanks a lot.